What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Hopsgeeknews, a podcast that talks about comic books, movies, TV shows, and we often feature beer of the week. I am Matt. With me, as always, is Lauren. We have two people that I like to call the Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen of the comic book world. They do everything together, and I love every single thing that they put out. They will be joining us in a minute. I don't want to spoil it yet. So first things first, if you're new to the show, by all means, please Hopsgeeknews on any single podcasting platform, every single social media platform. On Twitter, you'll see me acting a fool. Lauren runs the Instagram. We are two elder millennials messing around on TikTok even if we get crazy. So find us on all of those things. If you like to support the show, because everything that we do goes right back into the show, such as going to Comic-Cons and stickers and all sorts of things, patreon.com/hopsgeeknews. You can throw $1 at us. You can throw $5. I don't really care. You don't have to do anything because listening is enough for us. And just knowing that we're
like, share, love us, need us, sub us. Is that what the kids say? Sub us?
Yes. Sub, all that good things. And of course, we always start with a beer of the week. Usually we do news, what we're watching. But like I said, we have a couple special guests, so we're not going to do that this week. Let's dive into the beer of the week. It is Bright, which is a double IPA coming at 7.8%. If you're on the YouTube, here's the can for you. It is from none other than Treehouse Brewing, because I made the pilgrimage back home recently and had to come home with a full suitcase full of beer. And I thought Treehouse is a special beer. We got a couple of really amazing people with us today, so why not break out the top shelf material? Lauren, what are you drinking?
I am oddly drinking the same exact thing. It's like you told me to drink it. It's amazing. I have it in my Free the Whales glass because Treehouse is still a whale down here in Florida. Like, as much as the distribution has increased with so many amazing breweries, this is one I don't know that we'll ever see. And this is my first legit craft beer in well over a week, because I was at the Tortuga Music Fest all weekend and it was just nonstop hop guns. And then last night at Disney, it was nonstop Sierra Nevadas. So this is very nice to have a nice legit craft beer. Sierra Nevada is still craft, but it's big craft.
That's true. Last week I drank water on the show because I had strep and just powered through it. And so this week it's a nice.
And it was 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
And it was, look, you know what? It's never a bad time. It's always, I'm in the mountain time zone. So it's 5 o'clock somewhere, right? As they always say. That said, guys, let's introduce our guest. We have two really great comic book creators. We have Jackson Lanzing and we have Collin Kelly, who are gracious enough to join us. Gentlemen, welcome to the show. How's it going?
Hey, thank you for having us. It's going great. It's awesome. As if you're on the YouTube, you can see I am on the way to Coachella. So I'm having a good weekend.
Yes.
Collin Kelly over here. Happy to be here. Happy to have you guys invite us over.
Of course. Thank you for taking the time. You guys have done a lot of comic books. Before we get there, we're having some pre-show chat about beer. So Collin, let's start with you because I know you're drinking a beer. What are you drinking over there?
Oh, I'm having a Firestone Walker 805 because I'm a man of taste and culture, and I like to buy a lot of beer for as little money as possible. But I also like the robust flavor of the 805. It's a good drinking IPA, a working man's IPA, and it's been, for the first time in quite a while, real hot here in Los Angeles. So I've been fartsing around in my yard, taking care of business and day drinking.
That's the best. There's nothing.
I was going to say that's the best beer review.
Lawnmower beers, as we call them. It's just like, hey, I'm going to go out. It's an excuse. Like, oh man, I'm working up a sweat. You know what? I'm working this beer off. I'm going to have one. I'm going to treat myself.
That's how I normally manage it. And because I'm on the road, I can't drink a beer, which, let me tell you, just a real shame. In almost exactly an hour, however, I will be getting to Ritual Brewing. Or no, we're not going to Ritual anymore. We're going to Eureka. So they'll have a bunch of different kinds of beer.
Look, there's just so many breweries that we're hitting up. We can't keep them straight. And that's the dream.
Yeah. LA's got a great scene. What you going to do?
It's true. It does. And
we don't have Treehouse. Like, that's for sure. But
there's still some hidden gems out there in LA that people don't realize. And that's one thing I'll say. And I can't wait to, you showed us some Bottle Logic and things. You've got some refined taste as well. Many leather bound books, if you will.
My wife is a scholar about it. I'm a dilettante, but I enjoy it. Alex, my wife, is she has her Untapped is like impeccable. Like, it's like perfectly organized. She has reviews on how many beers at this point? We're gonna find the number for you because she's impressive. Yeah, she has 4,710 unique beers on Untapped, which I thought was pretty solid.
I always forget to check things because I'd like to have it because if I go to a place and I'm like, oh, what did I have in this place when I talk about it? So I always forget. So I'm really bad about it.
I have a friend who does.
Sorry, bud. Go ahead.
It's the app.
No, I know it's the app. Is it something that people can like follow? Because I feel like for this audience, like in the show notes, look for Alex's Untapped because like that thing's bomb, and you probably want to know.
That's true. Are you Lifeinanutshel on Untapped? Yeah. Do you mind if people follow you on Untapped? Yeah, she does. She's not sure how interesting it would be, but she seems down. So yeah, Lifeinanutshel, 1L, all one word. Follow her on Untapped.
Put that in the show notes, folks. It'll be there, and you can like.
She's got great stuff. Crazy. Yeah.
It's great taste. Alex is dope.
So
we don't talk about that on podcasts enough, so I'm down.
We don't. It's true.
I know everybody everybody comes to talk to you guys, but it's like, now hold on a second. Like, can you put Alex on for a second? Because we got questions about beer origin stories and things like that. She's unofficially come on.
Easy move. She works in geek media too, so like she'll get off.
Incredible. But seriously, craft beer scenes, you guys love a good IPA. How did you guys get into beer? I know we're all just like, we love to drink it. And my thing is I love to just experience new things and adventure. And it's also kind of that excuse to drink beers, but it's like, hey, I'm trying something new, right? Before people can't judge you. So how did you guys get into it?
Matthew, how dare you steal my entire answer? That's exactly what I would say. Like, I think I didn't get into beer because I loved beer. I'll be honest. I've learned to love beer. I got into beer because my previous drink of choice had been whiskey, which I still love a good scotch, and I have a nice little scotch collection, but it's not a great casual drink all the time. Like, they end up drinking a lot of whiskey, and I wasn't wild about that. On top of that, like, it's hard to go to a bunch of whiskey bars and be like
coherent.
Exactly. So my wife and I got pretty early in our relationship. We had to drive across the country from Boston to Los Angeles. We had about 6 days, and along the way, we discovered that the best way to find good food would be to look for the brew pubs, right?
Oh, yeah.
Look for the brew pubs with kitchens and local beer, and you'll find generally some pretty solid food. It's not going to be, Michelin star food, but it doesn't need to be. It's going to be really great, right down the middle American food, sort of wherever you go. And sometimes like Italian or Chinese or like all kinds of, because these places, like, they just have a kitchen and then they have great beer. And we just discovered so many great restaurants that way. And that was paired with these memories of beer. And so over time, we figured out that we could do it. We could bring that same fun to like Los Angeles, to like where we live. Where I was like, oh, there's one over there. We'll go on what we call beer ventures, and we'll go find what many people I'm sure call beer ventures. Really go and you have a little beer adventure. We love it. It's great. And I think that's how I got into beer. And then after that, I figured out you start on what I imagine most beer drinkers do, which is like you like find your cycle of tastes. And you're like, oh, I really started by being into Belgians. Now you couldn't get me to drink a Belgian if you tried, but I loved them for a really long time, right?
I won't drink Pilsners personally.
Never did get into Pilsners or lagers.
Yeah, I'm stouts. Stouts are like my favorite. I do like a really good sour because I like experimenting because I brew beer. So to me, it's like, let's get the weirdest thing that you can possibly throw in here and we'll see what happens.
Ooh, I go for those double and triple hazies.
I'm on your side, Lauren. I used to be a stout boy. Now that's my beer origin story, Collin. Please give them the exact opposite.
I like it because it's wet, and when you're thirsty, it dries. It makes your mouth feel good, and then you enjoy.
Called mouthfeel. See, he's using these like Cicerone terms. It's amazing. Yeah, I did just add your wife on Untapped. I'm the hoppy mommy.
Hell yeah.
Amazing. I like it. I like the low stuff. I will tell you this. I'm pretty lackadaisical when it comes to drinking. I like it. It's all pretty good. But I discovered, I was studying abroad in Ireland, and I discovered Guinness from the tap. And it was like it's like the true beer.
It's the
right?
good stuff. Yeah.
It's the good stuff. And it travels over your tongue and you're just like, this isn't beer. This is like home.
Heaven.
Yeah, heaven. Exactly. This is something transcendent and magical. And from that point on, it is actually, that kind of obsession of like, I seek whimsy, right? I seek wonder. And that's not necessarily like, I don't fucking know a red hoppy, I don't know, man. But whenever I walk up to a bartender and it looks like someone who knows what the fuck they're talking about, I like to say, give me the weird stuff. And I just tell them,
deliciously gross is a thing that Collin has we'd go out and he'd be like, what should I get on this like beer menu? Like, oh, you should maybe like try this. And eventually we figured out that the thing that he would like was when he would drink it and he'd smile and he'd go gross. And I was like, awesome, great. And a lot of that turned into it was like red sours and like
Flanders red.
Yeah, Flanders red.
But
those are like vinegar.
Yep. Like plum, a lot of like the brewery, I think like a brewery, pure brewery in the beer. Like, getting weird. That's the kind of good juice. Basically, it's like if someone salt and peppered flat Dr. Pepper, right? Like, no, that is what I am jamming on.
To open a brewery and just call it the weird shit.
I love the
amazing.
Weird shit. Because I want to have fun with it, right? Like, yes, you drink, as I said, I'm drinking an 805. It's hot out here. I'm drinking a beer. But when you sit down to actually drink something that's going to excite you, like, no, give me a magic trick.
That's true.
Oh, yeah.
I'm with you. And that's what's the beauty of it, right? There's so much like fun to be had. And there's something for everybody too, which is like this, which goes into comic books, which is why I also love comic, because there's something for everybody.
Nice.
You can get weird with comic books. You can get weird with beer. And you're always going to have something, a flavor, if you will, for everybody. And speaking of comic books, you guys have written a couple. No big deal. You've worked on some things here and there, Captain America.
A few.
Star Trek. You've worked on Kang. And then, of course, you've worked on, most recently, the newest Western-style version of the Guardians of the Galaxy, which, of course, I've got right here. And
I have a different cover. I got this cover.
I was going to say, which covers do you got?
I got the Gamora variant one.
And then Lauren's got the Chichetto. Yes. I think they both rip.
We'll post both of them on the Instagram so people can see what we're talking about and so that you can go and get it.
Yes, because that's one thing I loved is a lot of times not only did the writing bleed into the art, but the art made the writing pop out a bit to me. So before we get there, though, because you guys have worked on so many things together, how did this team up come about? How did you guys ended up teaming up? How did you get with Marvel together? Like, how did you work on all of these stories? And at this point, is it just one of those like we're conjoined twins where our ideas just flow seamlessly?
Yes.
Yes. I warn you that story is long, so I'm going to let Collin take it so I don't make it like the longest story of all time.
I'm gonna do this. Okay.
All right.
So your original analogy of Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen is shockingly accurate because Jack and I began our journeys through competition and hatred. It was really one way. I was not a huge fan of him, but he thought I was pretty cool. We met in school. We both went to USC when we were in film school together. Jack was in production. I was in screenwriting. And we were very similar kind of dudes. In fact, so similar that our third friend who had a PT Cruiser, classic automobile, we would all tumble into his car, and every Wednesday we would go buy our comic books. We would eat greasy pizza, and we would read our comic books, and we would yell at each other, like all good,
dudes being bros, all right?
An old married couple.
Exactly. We were absolutely a nerd-based.
No, Kitty Pryde is Peter Parker's best girlfriend.
And that was kind of how the friendship made. Jack and I ended up in a writing group together where we kind of each discovered that the other guy was doing some pretty incredible stuff.
It turned out I really liked how Collin wrote.
Yeah, and Jack has this wild, stupid imagination that lets him write like really emotionally rich characters. So once we graduated, we went on a crazy road trip, not unlike Jack is going right now, kind of continuing the emotional journey that we once began as he drives to Coachella. And at the time, we drove to Lollapalooza,
Another good festival, man. I love the musical.
Get this, it was Rage Against the Machine, Kanye in his first time back to Chicago.
After he got famous and before he became
crazy.
Yeah.
And Radiohead.
Dude, who I used to follow around religiously. Like I've seen Radiohead more times than I can count. And I sort of like, I've been like, Collin, you gotta see Radiohead. And we've driven across that was the whole point. Drove across the country and listened to every Radiohead album. And while we did it, we started writing a story together. We didn't really realize we were doing it, but you have a lot of open space in the middle of the country, and you have to talk about something.
Nebraska's one long flat area of misery. Yes, as somebody who's driven from New Hampshire to Idaho. Yes,
and so we ended up just talking about story and talking about the things that we loved, and we ended up we were both raised a lot on samurai fiction and both like really loved a lot of Akira Kurosawa, obviously, but like the Musashi Miyamoto stories are like really powerful for us. So we're like we wanted to. We just started talking about it and built a samurai movie effectively on the way to this this festival and outlined it on hand. And then we were a little ahead of schedule coming back. We had a party, we had a great festival time. We came back, and on our way we had one day ahead because Yellowstone was like mostly closed. We've been really hoping to check out Yellowstone. That was my thing. Like I was showing Collin Radiohead and he was showing me Yellowstone.
Dude,
and we had a great day at Yellowstone.
So you got to go. Okay, good. Because that's one of my favorite places in the country.
Collin's been more than I have, but then we went to this little hotel outside and got in, and we had a day ahead, and we were like, why don't we just try to write this movie? And we had one laptop and a pack of cigarettes. Neither of us smoked, but we smoked that day, and we just wrote and smoked and wrote, and it was the whole day. And by the time we were done, we had 85 pages in like one day, and they didn't suck. They weren't great, right? But they didn't suck. They were actually like, well, these could be good. This could be a good movie if we make it work. And we knew we had something kind of special, brought it back to LA. Collin had been hip pocketed by an agent who took a look at us and validated us, and got pretty close to selling that movie to Fox. Like we developed it at Fox for like a year. Wow. So that started our career. We were like, oh, I guess we're writing together. That's our thing. That we put ourselves together just by tripping into it. Turned out we were really good at writing together.
Yep. And then throughout the next decade, we've worked in pretty much every single medium. We were working in the digital space before House of Cards. When no one understood how YouTube would work. How can you have shows on YouTube? No one understood.
You can people just watch videos on YouTube. They watch people play video games on YouTube. What?
Online? Oh, we weren't even to Twitch yet. This was like 3 cultural revolutions before Twitch.
And it's not like we're ancient guys. We are.
I miss those YouTube days.
No, we just got put together right out of college. So we were like young guys in our 20s, and we were just trying to figure out what we were doing. But we knew that the one thing we knew, and we were learning more every week, was like we were really good friends and we were really good writers together. And that the more that we worked together, the more that our friendship seemed to work, and also the more that our work seemed to work. Like it was a really beautiful fit because we liked hanging out with each other. We liked talking, but then we also got more work done than either of us would otherwise get. And we realized that we could turn that into an engine. But Hollywood can only use that engine so much because ultimately we were getting paid sort of very little to not at all to write on things that never came out. We had one thing ever get made, which was we were 13 episodes of a YouTube animated series called Kings of Atlantis. That was an adaptation of a Twitch channel in its own like bizarre way. And we were like kind of getting frustrated because that wasn't what we were trying to do. And we were really like, we were quote unquote working, but we weren't actually working. And we had always loved comics, right? We used to go to the comic shop. We look back to our origin, and we were still going and buying our monthly comics. We were still catching up on Marvel and DC every week. And it felt like why not try our hand at that as much as we could? David, the guy who introduced us, and I had made one comic. And so we had sort of gotten that initial interest in, but Dave didn't want to be a writer. And it kind of like, or not like, all the time. He's a rep. He reps a bunch of writers. He's brilliant at it. And so Collin and I teamed up, and about 4 years later, we got a call from Rebecca Taylor, who was the first editor who ever hired us, who was an assistant at a company when I was selling that very first comic. and hadn't been able to acquire it. And she said, "Hey, do you guys want to ghostwrite for Alyssa Milano?"
Wow.
That was the call. It was like, "Oh, I know you write, and I know that like initially," and we're like, I mean, we don't want to ghostwrite. We'll write for Alyssa Milano if she wants to like put our names on it. We'll do it." And they were like, "Great, send us your stuff so that we can read it," because they hadn't read Collin and I, right? Send us some screenplays or whatever, and then we'll sit you down with Alyssa and see how it goes. And I genuinely think that us sitting down with Alyssa and Alyssa Milano being awesome and a wonderful person and very friendly to us and like liked us enough to hire us onto the book, kind of started our careers. Like it was like Rebecca Taylor and Alyssa Milano.
That's so wild.
That's actually how we started writing comics, as bizarre as that is.
Well, and now you're writing a Guardians comic, which has the Milano. That all came full circle.
All full circle.
I know it really feels like we should put the Milano back in the book. The Milano is long gone in the book.
It'll be the Alyssa now.
There you go.
But yeah, specifically kind of like they brought us in because we could speak Hollywood, and it's kind of come full circle because now we're kind of back and we're doing everything. As you point out, we're writing a lot of books, we're wearing a lot of hats, but we're loving life.
That's awesome. That's what it's all about.
Is it difficult? So you guys are like, you're going from Star Trek back to Marvel. Is it difficult at all trying to switch gears at all, or is it kind of refreshing in a way for you guys?
It is refreshing, absolutely. Like the difference between a Star Trek and a Captain America and a Guardians, you have to really dial into each of their tones. And yes, that can give you a little bit of whiplash, but the fun thing is that it does keep it fresh. You never get tired of writing one thing too much because you got about 4 days to turn that thing around, and then it's time for something new. And that can be really exciting. But yes, it can give you whiplash occasionally.
There used to be Bendis used to say that he would like write a comic in a day or like write a comic in like 2 days. And I always thought that sounded absurd. And now that's basically what we do. We write in 3 to 4 days per issue. And then 4 or 5 books at a time. We're currently because Batman Beyond Neo-Gothic fills out that quadrangle.
Right. Yes.
So we're doing these 4 books simultaneously. And that means basically every week we have a deadline at the end of the week. Over the course of that week, we get to dive into that script and we get to live in that tone. So for 1 week, we're in Captain America. And for 1 week, we're in Batman Beyond. And for 1 week, we're in Guardians of the Galaxy. And for 1 week, we're in Star Trek. And then we just move through that. And that helps us be able to focus. It's not like we're like chaotically jumping between script and script and trying to find a way to like make the scene work while we're thinking about this Captain America fight over here. Like it's not as chaotic as that. It's much more ordered. But what that does, and I hope it reflects in the work, is it does allow the work to be in conversation with the rest of our work while also being its own thing and in its own tone and sitting in a space. And playlists are super helpful for that as well. We have really specific project playlists that are designed we work together like in the same physical space. So we play music. And that really helps because it creates a sense of what the tone of the thing is supposed to be. And the Guardians playlist sounds very different than the Batman Beyond playlist, which sounds very different than Star Trek or whatever. And that to find the tone and then live it as much as possible. So we find ways to make it fun.
So what are the playlists? You guys got an example? Is it Radiohead for a lot of example on a lot of it, or what's like the playlist themes for some of these?
We try to be really different on every one because if they're too specific or similar, if it's just like music we like, then it doesn't fulfill the purpose, right?
But we do have for our first creator-owned book, Joyride, which was effectively described as a punk rock teenage Star Trek. It's about 3 kids who kick ass. They leave an Earth that totally sucks, steal a spaceship, and never come back. We fucking love it. Absolutely.
It was with Marcus Toe at Boom.
And that was what the follow-up to Hacktivist was. And each of those volumes actually has a playlist written out in back. You can download them. I think it's a Spotify link. Like you can get the mixed and they rip. And we will be doing something similar for Guardians of the Galaxy. Jack put together this like kick-ass playlist for it that has been our writing mix, right? Like right now, it has 60 songs on it. So it needs to be winnowed down. But like one of these days, we're going to have the Guardians playlist because while our project, is a very big departure from what Gunn is doing in the movies, we all share the same DNA of being big music dorks and music infusing our work. Clearly, that's something that if us and James ever did meet, hey, James, call us, we would geek out about music, almost certainly.
Yeah.
I love you taking your shot at James Gunn here. That was great.
Oh, he's a regular listener.
You
Don't
didn't
worry.
know James Gunn obviously listens to what we do here. He's liked like 2 of our tweets before. He's big time.
Hey, that's something. I love that. But to answer your question really directly though, because you did ask about Radiohead, Captain America is Radiohead actually. Oh. Captain America: Sentinel of Liberty is written almost entirely to a there's a music journalist named Matt Perpetua, who wrote a book about Radiohead. And inside that book, it's specifically about the Kid A Amnesiac sessions. And in that book, he sequences out one album out of both sessions, basically being like, if you take the right songs out of Kid A and the right songs out of that other album, that's Amnesiac, it actually creates like the best Radiohead album of all time. He was like, I swear it's a good sequence. And so he did the sequencing. So I was like, I'll use that for like at the beginning when we were trying to figure out what Cap was. We were always using the Winter Soldier music, like the score from Winter Soldier, because it's great, but it's also like it's very oppressive and very action oriented and very intense. So if you're writing something that's like paranoid or smaller, it tends to kind of push against it.
But when Cap is just in New York, it's all Billy Joel, baby. It is Billy Joel band. He has been going to him at the Square Garden. He wears a hat so no one knows he's there. But like Captain America, the music of Captain's life in New York is Billy Joel. I will not.
Yeah, but I have never listened to Billy Joel while writing Steve. Not once in my life.
Well, that's Jack's problem, not mine.
Colin's like, well, funny fact is that's what I'm listening. You put on the playlist overhead. I popped the AirPods in, and guess what?
Jack thinks I've been listening to his Radiohead. Oh, it's the Piano Man, all the time.
See, I think of Billy Joel now, and I just think of Huey from The Boys. And I know you guys had mentioned you had a Derek Robertson story you wanted to share with us before we started recording.
Oh, just that it's more just that Derek's a dear and excellent friend. And I guess I hear that you asked him that if he was ever disturbed by what he drew in The Boys. Right.
And he has a sick imagination.
Yeah, one of the first times I ever met him, he was drawing the cover for that book that David and I did. David is his rep. They met at this Comic-Con. He volunteered to draw our cover, and then David ended up representing him in Hollywood. And Boys had been, he'd been out for a while, and Transmet had sort of changed my life. So I knew Derek really well. What I didn't know is that he was always going to look for the darkest possible solution to anything on the page. So he was drawing our characters, and he kept like making pitches for how to make our book more fucked up. That was like his whole thing. And he kept being like, it's really good that I'm not the artist, because like, oh, this book would be way, way darker and like that guy would be naked. And you're like, all right, Derek, right on, man. I love it.
Oh, man, that's amazing.
So Derek got us into The Boys premiere, as long as
he did.
He got us into The Boys premiere at Comic-Con so that we were all just kind of bullshitting and hanging out with him when Carl Urban came up, who is very large and very handsome, and said, I have a nice shirt.
Aw.
It's true. Carl Urban complimented Colin's shirt. For real.
Did he then call you a cunt and walk off? Because that's what I would want him to do to me.
Yeah, I know he did, and then I fainted.
Those are words that like I would type out and like frame on my wall to where if I ever saw him again, like, can you please sign this? Because at one time I've been writing this compliment high for about 6 years now. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm sure he has people wanting to say that to them as well. I'm sure that does happen.
He is absurdly charismatic. Sometimes you just hang out with someone, and you're like, oh yeah, I get it, movie star.
Yeah. Yeah. Which we, just a shameless plug. If anybody's listening, we deserve a Dread too, but that's just, where I live.
Hell yeah.
So
hell yeah.
Here.
And my axe.
Yes.
So going back, you guys are, a lot of the people we have on the show are more so independent contractors, independent comic book creators that get to do whatever they want. The world is their oyster when they're writing. So working for, Marvel and DC and Star Trek, do they point you in any direction, or do they tell you, go ahead and write what you want, use whatever origin stories do you want? Or are you given a framework before you can get creative?
fully on a case-by-case basis. It's really not about like Marvel does one thing or DC does one thing. It's more like, what does the project require? So, for instance, when we were brought on to Captain America, we were brought in. Well, actually, let's rewind that. When we got quote unquote brought on to Kang, that was us just showing up to Marvel, sight unseen, right? Having never worked at Marvel before, with a pitch for Kang the Conqueror that we sent to Alana Smith, who is an amazing editor there and who had met us once at San Diego Comic-Con and had told us the very first time she met us, you'd be really good Steve boys. That's how she put it, saying that we'd be good to write Captain America. We were just in the middle of the pandemic and we had this crazy idea and we really wanted to do a Kang story. And so we turned this Kang story in this book that was mostly about our own like weird relationship with our fatherhoods and masculinity, or our fathers and masculinity and fatherhood and abuse. And we pitched it all in Kang the Conqueror, which seemed insane to us. But we were like, hey, we got to do it. Everything else that we've tried to get to Marvel is sort of struck out. And it clicked at exactly the right time. And they were looking for sign. And Tom Brevoort was really interested in the sort of idea of making it into a time loop. And so they just supported us. And then what Marvel did was they came in. Tom Brevoort is quote unquote Marvel in this context. He's the executive editor there. Or certainly senior editor, whatever it is. He came in and asked us 100 questions and made us answer them and made us like be honest with ourselves about what we could answer and couldn't, and how good this was going to work versus how it would, and whether it was worth taking these moments with Kang. And then once that had been satisfied, we were free to go. And then nobody messed with us at all. We wrote the book we wanted to write. Moon Knight wasn't even in the outline. We just threw Moon Knight into issue 2 because she felt right there. We had this like female ancient times Moon Knight. I was like, this just feels like an awesome thing to put here. It's perfect for the story and it's going to tie to the rest of it. And we didn't ask permission and they had no problem with it.
Yeah, it's pretty neat in that like we have gotten the opportunity to work with effectively a fleet of amazing editors, and we're not working with them because like, the paperwork makes sense. We're working with them because like they believe in us and we believe in them. So we are kind of blessed, especially right now, to just want to tell the coolest stories possible. And the people we're working with are like, sweet, those sound like the coolest stories possible. So, yes, everyone has corporate overlords. Like, all of our Star Trek stuff has to go up to Daddy Star Trek and all the way back down to us. And yes, there's all these conversations, but since everyone does just want to make the coolest thing possible, we've been really lucky to be able to treat a lot of our licensed work as creator-owned. I would say that we have as much passion and ownership of our Captain America run or our Star Trek run as we do for our creator-owned stuff like Joyride or Zojicon or one of our other books, or our upcoming graphic novel With Wolf. But yeah, we love all of our babies equally. And honestly, getting to play with the coolest toys is always going to be a total rush. I mean, it's also and Guardians of the Galaxy at the same time. Come on.
It's pretty insane. I think the most like the only book that I think is like super impacted by the plans. I mean, like all of our books are super impacted by the plans of other people to some degree. Captain America shares a line with Symbol of Truth. So we're sharing space with Tochi Onyebuchi and Arby Silva and like their storytelling space. And obviously we just super get along with Tochi. So it's awesome. Have just been able to build cool story, and Cold War was a rush. Like we had a blast building it with him. We invited Chris Cantwell into the Star Trek line through Defiant to help build that out. Chris is a friend and obviously like an incredible writer, but that also means that like now we're building with Chris. We're not just building with ourselves. We're not just coming up with the ideas and they're going out there and dictating to everybody else. We're sitting in a room with Heather Antos and Chris Cantwell and Jamie Rich, and like we're working out these stories. And then those still, have to be approved by Daddy Star Trek. Like Batman Beyond is very much a group effort insofar as that was done with a guy named Dave Wielgos, who's no longer at DC, but Dave trusted us kind of implicitly. We'd really gone through the ringer together through many projects. So Dave didn't even have us outline on Batman Beyond. He just had us be like, what's the basic framework? How's it going to work? And once he got it greenlit, we just got to write it, which is a lovely thing because you're fully protected. Like at that point, no one can really stop you as long as you're not doing something that's harmful to the canon, right? And we try to be observant and honest with ourselves about what feels like too much of a swing. Guardians of the Galaxy is a complete departure. Darren Shan brought us in, and Darren's a really great editor, and he came in and was sort of like, what do you guys want to do? And we really built it from scratch, and then he protected it and got it up the line, and no one at Marvel said anything about it, and everyone at Marvel's been super gracious and just been, we don't feel like we need to clear anything with anybody except for Darren. And otherwise, Marvel, that section of Marvel space, those characters, that vibe has just been trusted to us for a period of time, which is quite the honor and a really lovely thing, but also results in a little bit more of a like freewheeling, like most of the Guardian scripts are first drafts. Like, I don't mean first drafts like we didn't do revisions internally, but they're the first thing that went to Marvel, and Marvel's just been like, yeah, awesome.
Wow.
And then the only person who's really getting in there is Kev Walker, our artist, who is as much a part of the storytelling process as we are on that book.
Yeah, he's filled with ideas, which is absolutely amazing. But the cool thing is also just with Guardians, they're very specifically like, don't do the movies. Movies great, love them. Don't do that. Do new. Do
right.
Different. And we're like, bitchin', cool. So it's been really wildly free. When you might think like, oh yeah, I bet they are really controlling that IP. It's like, nope, they want the new hotness, and we're happy to deliver.
Nice. Now, going to the Guardians book, obviously there's a lot of Western influence here. So what are some of the things that you guys love that made you want to make this like a Western in space, I should say?
Well, you heard in our origin that we're super into samurai stories, and samurai stories are obviously kissing cousins to Western stories
without a doubt.
From a sort of tonal perspective. So I think that was a big part of it. I think when Western came up in the first place, I think when people hear space Western, they think Firefly or Cowboy Bebop. There's certain like references that they can like sort of take from that. We were not trying to think about space Westerns. Mm-hmm. This is a Western that takes place in space, but we're not really thinking of it the way that you think about like a space Western. And so as a result, we're trying to really just make our reference points not other space Westerns, but Westerns themselves. Unforgiven has been like a huge touch point on this book. It sort of carries a lot of the same tone and guilt and sort of emotional darkness that we're trying to inject into the Guardians, which feels like a very dangerous thing to inject into the Guardians because they're a fun team and you want them to be fun.
That's what we kind of like landed on with Western. Like really at its core, Westerns are stories about kind of tragedy, right? They're stories about people kind of at the edge, without a net, just trying to hold on to whatever it is that they've brought with them. It's about hard lives. And that's what we really wanted to be putting the Guardians through, coming out of Al Ewing's amazing, but very cathartic kind of everyone's getting together and everything is very good, which is wonderful. That is not the story we wanted to tell. So once we realized
it wasn't a story we could tell, like he had told it to its apex. Mm-hmm. The last image of Ewing's run, I know that there are fans who wish that the Ewing run would go forever, and I'm one of them. I totally understand it. But I think that at the end of the day, that run got to the place where everyone was in a bar, holding up beers, toasting each other, holding hands, and being psyched. Everybody loved each other and had said that they loved each other. And it was like, okay, there's nowhere to go, like, except down, unfortunately. Because these characters are at the very top of their life.
You have to know when to end it, because if you drag something out for too long, then it's just like, okay, we're just doing this just to.
But then it's a sitcom.
Yeah, and then like
exactly.
the love kind of disappears from something if you're just doing it to drag it.
And it takes what is special about Al's run away. And so we didn't want to disrespect Al's run, and obviously I think at the very beginning it's going to look like we are, because we are coming in and being like, it's a Western, they're gone, everyone's sad, things are dark. Groot is not what you remember. Rocket isn't even here. Like, there's a lot of very challenging initial assumptions that we're asking the audience to make at the beginning of this, given where the book ended. And I hope it seems like people are on board, but like, I hope people can see as it's going along that we're not forgetting that the Master of the Sun is not forgotten, that Gamora and Peter and Nebula and Nova's love is not forgotten. Like, that these are things that are all still in the universe, but they're caked in scar tissue for a period of time, and that it's important that be there, or we're not actually we're not making it for the long term. We're only making it for the short term,
Right.
then just wildly enough, with all of that kind of heavy caked into the scar tissue, cakes of scar tissue, which is just disgusting.
Thanks, bud.
The Guardians are also really.
I started to think Drax. There's cake. Okay.
It turns out the Guardians are also just like really fun. Like even when they are in these moments of crisis.
Yeah.
Yes. They're still giving each other shit and being sarcastic.
Well, I mean, in this, like Mantis is out here just like
living her best life.
She's living her best life while everybody like there's these dire things. Groot is very different than what people would expect Groot. And they're like, there's this moment of crisis, and Mantis is just like, yeah, I'm vibing.
Well, and that's like Mantis is, everyone else is an absolute free fall. Mantis herself is actually kind of like, she's a wine mom now. Like her kid, they went through all of Empire. She's been defined by her child, and like he's resolved. Like it turned out kind of a shithead, had to get dealt with.
As kids.
And she's now kind of getting to discover who she is. Like she's light and breezy and has a kind of consciousness and ability to shift between different multiversal realities, right? Like she can literally be anyone she wants to be for the first time in her life. And while that's going to express itself as like pretty hell yeah, like definitely vibing, like it is still going to become a kind of crisis. But right now, yes, she is. We love Mantis. We'll write Mantis all fucking day. She's a total gas.
And that's probably one of my favorite.
I think one of the things that we really was that. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. I was just going to fanboy for a minute and be like, when you mentioned that they wanted something that wasn't the movies, it's like, that's what I wanted, because we got that. This is a complete departure. And I'm like, this is a new, fresh story. It's refreshing again.
Still feel like those characters.
Yes.
Yeah. We fell in love with in the MCU.
The essence of what the Guardians are and who they are throughout any medium at the core of who they are.
I think it's important for the MCU to, and this might feel like a controversial statement, I hope it doesn't. I think it's really important for the MCU to be recognized not as the head of the dog, that comics are the head of the dog. And that if you this isn't to call it, I think the MCU is almost like the entire rest of the dog, but you don't want to let the entire rest of the dog wag the dog.
So think about it this way. It's like when you were thinking about the head of the dog, comics can be the head of the dog because
you know what I mean?
You're in their mind. Like the mind controls everything, right? And what do we do when we're in movies? We pull from all of these stories. So the MCU's pulling from the mind, if you will.
Thank you. I was just trying to make a wag the dog reference that kind of went sideways. I appreciate you trying to make that sound smarter than it was.
Comics are the brain, and the brain wags the tail.
Exactly.
There you go. And that's only part of the dog, because I feel like with Quantum Mania and some of the stuff they're doing now, it's the first time that they're really going out there, because it used to be, the comic book characters were in movies, and now it's the movies are becoming comic book stories. And I think that's why we're getting so much like headbutting that people forget, like these comics, a lot of them are way out there, and like you're still only getting a fraction of that, in something like the quantum realm. So
100%. Well, and the comics have gone on for nearly a century now,
which is crazy.
And most of the really core fiction has already been adapted or is being adapted right now.
No, but for real, I know we got to wrap up here in a minute, but before we go, if anybody, two things. Number one, what is the most your favorite, like you guys had the most fun doing? And this isn't picking favorites because we're like kids, we don't pick favorites. But what is like the story that you just clicked together the most on?
It doesn't even have to be your best work, just when you had the most fun working on.
Just like what was one that like we just vibed?
Yeah, Joyride.
Ooh, nice.
Joyride is vibes. It's the most purely us thing that we've ever done. I think all of our books have a sliver of us in them. Joyride is like extremely us. There's another book that's like that, actually, that I think is finally going to get published. And I'm looking forward to people seeing it because there's another thing we've been working on for as long. Like we were working on back during Joyride. That's now only finally probably going to see the light of day. I say probably because I cannot commit myself to hope, right? But if it does come out, I think that's going to be the other one. People can really should not just sense like, oh, this is a thing that like, oh, this is Jackson and Collin's take on this, or this is Collin and Jackson's take on that. This is like a pure distillation of our friendship or our community or our vibe together. And I think that Joyride was a big part of that. And I think this next thing will be too. I hope so.
Yes, and Joyride is on Amazon if you can't get it at your local comic book shop.
It is.
Hell yeah. But please get it at your local comic book shop if you can.
And if they don't have it, you can always ask. Sometimes they can order them for you. So always ask them first.
It's a great thing to do.
I would absolutely say, yes, Joyride, amazing, but there's a few things you can imagine that's more of a rush than writing for the first time. Captain America throws his mighty shield. It gives you chills, man. Yes. Because he do it. He throw that mighty shield, and he has to in almost every issue, and every time it is an absolute rush.
Never gets old. That's true. That's
awesome.
Man, that is good. As somebody who's writing their very first comic book, and you guys make it look so effortlessly. So I hope that eventually, just like that's why I love getting to talk to everybody and just like the different things, because that's what makes art beautiful, is when you talk about your artists are as much a part of the story. And it's true. It takes a group effort. You have your editors, you have your writers, and everybody just thinks about, oh, you wrote this, you wrote that. Well, no, there's also artists involved. So everybody
very much.
I just
more than anyone recognizes most of the time.
Art's the hard part, man. I can't draw. As somebody who cannot draw, it's the hardest part.
It's also the medium defining part. A comic script is a letter to an artist designed to inspire them to make a comic. The artist is the comic. The writer is an engine for the comic to exist. But the physical medium comic is the artist's medium.
I will say, with all the comic book artists and comic book writers we've talked to in the last 2.5 years since we've been doing this, I always ask, what's it like working with the artist? And the writers are always like, the artist was amazing. They took what I've never hear complaints. I never hear friction. It always just seems like these people just know how to make to put your work right there on the paper. It's awesome. It's such a collaborative effort that you really don't realize the first time you pick up a comic book.
It's absolutely not. Nor maybe the first time you make one.
Yes. God, it's hard. But
I'm looking forward to reading yours though, Matthew. That sounds awesome.
I'll tell you when we wrap up. I'll just tell you what it's about. Just
let me read it. Don't pitch it to me. Just let me read it.
I learned I have pressure because I've been sitting like nervous. So
yeah, no. At my very first Comic-Con tabling, Felicia Day bought my first book, Freak Show, and she just came by, and Felicia picked it up. And I was like, and I knew who she was. And I was like, can I? And I started like tell her about the book. I was like, it takes place in it. And she turns to me and goes, don't spoil it. You've already made the sale. Aww. And like just gave me just bought the book. And she was like, don't give the book away for free. And I was like, man, you're smart.
That's smart.
You should run a business.
We went up to her at
we don't want your milk.
Right. Well, I'm a big milk. We went up to her at Fan X. So I'm a big Supernatural fan, which she's awesome in, and she's a freaking geek in it. And Matt is only on season 4 or 5. So you haven't met Charlie yet though.
No.
But we went up to her and bullshitted with her for a few minutes. She was so sweet.
She's the best.
I love conventions, but oh man. So as we wrap up though, because I know we got to get going. Final thoughts. Is there anything that you want to impart upon anybody who might be listening to this? Anything you just want to leave us with as we get ready to wrap this up?
I would just, I would encourage folks to, if they've liked what they've heard from us, and I encourage you to go kind of dig around, check out what we've been putting down. We just did this book, One Bad Day Clayface, which is
that story so much.
60 pages. It's its own little standalone story. If you think some of our the darkness in our pasts, if you want to know how we really think Hollywood, what Hollywood is and what it does.
Oh no!
I encourage you to pick it up. It's actually, you asked what we had the most fun writing. Clayface was not fun to write, but it was so goddamn honest. It is one of the most personal works we've done. Talk about like creator-owned versus licensed work. We do not own Mr. Clayface, but we absolutely poured our heart, soul, and pain into that single issue.
That's I was telling Jack in Seattle, that was probably one of my favorite comics I've read in the last year for that reason alone. Like the just discussion in Hollywood, because it's been such a hot topic, that was one of my favorite. And Clayface is a tragic character as it is. So the way that you guys really brought that to the forefront and shown this light upon things that we can really pull into the real world, it's one of the best stories that I have read in the last year. And absolutely.
Thank you. Like Collin said, and I'll kind of give a little bit. I'll be a little more direct in my instruction. Please go to your local comic shop and buy a comic. Doesn't need to be our comic. Just buy a comic. It would be awesome if it was one of our comics. If there's something you like here that seems good, awesome. If you like conspiracy theories, Captain America is there for you. If you like Cyberpunk, Batman Beyond is there for you. If you like Westerns or just want to get sad and funny at the same time, Guardians of the Galaxy is there for you. And if you've ever liked any Star Trek ever, Star Trek is there for you. It's designed as an entry point for any Star Trek place, right?
Absolutely.
We have a fantasy book with Brandon Sanderson. We have Joyride back in the day. There's a lot of different kinds of stuff that you can find from us. If you go to your local comic shop and you get anything from them, that is the best way to show your support for any writer or creator, in all honesty, because the direct market keeps this, the direct market being comic book stores, getting their books directly from the publishers. That store and your local bookstore, incidentally, is exactly the same way. Keeps the business alive. It is the actual engine by which most of this economy makes money, and it's how places that actually publish this stuff. So anyway, it's the engine on which everybody determines success and determines whether or not a book keeps going, or determines whether or not they'll make more books.
Yes.
And that's the hardest thing about comic books is longevity. Is keeping something around longer than 6 issues or 12 issues or 24 issues or whatever, like trying to get these long storied runs that we used to get all the time in this industry. It's much harder to get now because of the way things are structured and because how hard it is to buy, to keep numbers up on a book. Star Trek, numbers are going up every issue. And so we're able to make.
Because of Picard?
I think it's just because of Star Trek. I think Star Trek is on a ride. I think everybody's getting into this. And I think the quality of the book has pulled, which I say just because I really do think that everyone on Star Trek is doing like the work of their careers right now. It's really lovely. I think it's pulled in comics fans who don't normally read Star Trek books.
Yeah.
That's what we hear incidentally from all these stores. And that's how we know that we can keep doing books. So please, if you're hearing this and you don't have a local comic shop, you use Comixology, or worse yet, you read like freecomicsonline.com or something, please go to your local comic shop and purchase a comic book. You can buy even a very cheap one. They're really, really helping the people who are creating the comics continue to make comics. And most industries, you don't need to make that plea, but like, I feel like I'm like Tom Cruise trying to get you to go into a movie theater, but I genuinely believe it's true. Like we need that for the industry to sustain.
And people who work at, there's nothing what?
I was just saying, there's nothing that beats a physical copy.
Oh, 100%.
Just a nice physical copy that you can see with your own eyes. That's my favorite thing. And Lauren, what were you
and then you can hand to your friend.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You can be like, hey, you haven't read this. You want to check this out? Pull it from your list. Boom, right there. There you go.
Well, I lent a friend the volume 1 of The Boys and she returned it and I went to give her 2. She goes, I'm not ready for it. She needed time to. But no, what I was going to say before, though, is like the people at your comic book shop, they are very similar to the beer tenders at your local brewery. Tell them what you like and they will give you something that you like.
Yes.
Just they know what they're talking about. And they will just, if you start a box, they will put what they think you like in that box. And if you decide, oh, I don't like that, they'll take it out. I love when I go to pick up my comics and there's a new one in there. Cause like I always have Wolverine, obviously. So like I just got the new Laura run and like it's awesome. And like they started throwing Sabretooth in there. And I was like, oh shit, I've never read a Sabretooth comic that was based just on him. He's always just been the villain in the Wolvie stories that I've read. So it's been fun to see that perspective of him. You start to have empathy and like it's things you didn't know that you would like that they know you would like. So, try that triple New England IPA, try that comic book you didn't think you'd like. You probably will like it.
Yeah.
Oh, hell yeah. Try them both at the same time. Let's go.
Oh my God. That's the dream. And drink them and read them on the beach. That's my favorite thing to do in the world.
Absolutely. Beer and comics, folks, makes the world go
on
round.
The beach.
Jack, Collin, thank you guys for hanging out with us. We sincerely appreciate it. This has been a ton of fun. And you always have a place here. If you ever want to just drink a beer and bullshit about comic books,
next time when you're not driving, you can have a beer.
Absolutely.
Next time we do this, I'm going to drink a beer. That's all I was saying.
All right. Well, there we go. So thank you guys for joining us, folks. Good beer, good comics. We'll catch you next week. Star Wars month is upon us. Cheers.